Before we begin, let me make a promise. In this video, I'm going to do three things. First, I'm going to revisit one of the most powerful thought experiments in the philosophy of language, Twin Earth, and show why most people, including many philosophers, still misunderstand what it really proves. I will also show how, far from refuting Frege, this experiment ends up vindicating his deepest insight. That meaning is not exhausted by reference. Second, I'll expose why truth value assignments, behavioral patterns, and even the best epistemic tools can't capture what meaning actually is. And third, I will make the case for mediation, not as a metaphor, but as the missing term in contemporary debates on reference, learning, and semantics. But more than that, this is a smuggling operation. I am smuggling real philosophical content, rigorous, conceptual, academic-level argument, into a platform that has, for the most part, been abandoned by seriousness and colonized by trolls who think 2 comment threads and a half-read blog post make them gatekeepers of intelligence. And now that AI has entered the room, they've suddenly decided they're above anything that uses it. As if intelligence were a purity test, and as if I hadn't written every line you're about to hear. So let me be clear. I'm not here to impress the comment section. I'm here to build a philosophical ecosystem, a space where ideas breathe again, where the format doesn't flatten the content, and where thought isn't forced to apologize for existing outside a journal paywall. If you're still with me after this, good, because what I'm about to say isn't just academic, it's a challenge to the way we've been taught to think about thought itself. In a near-future world obsessed with epistemic security, a world in which a misplaced metaphor can be prosecuted as a misdemeanor, a new device has emerged. Not to catch lies, mind you. Lies, after all, are so last century, what with their crude reliance on intent and their stubborn dependence on conscious agents. No, this machine detects something far more dangerous: semantic inconsistency. So, the great minds of the day, backed no doubt by the Department of Epistemological Hygiene and Narrative Integrity, developed what can only be described as a polygraph for meaning. It doesn't read your thoughts. That would be invasive. It reads your pattern of belief revision, which apparently is fair game. It maps your truth value assignments like a weather radar, looking for storms in your semantic sky. A contradiction? That's a Category 5 hurricane. Today, 2 suspects are under examination, one from Earth, the other from the slightly more hydrated realm of Twin Earth. They will be asked to answer a series of true or false statements, but beware, there are no right answers, only wrong patterns. And if your truth assignments don't form a coherent web of belief that would make Quine weep tears of admiration, well, then perhaps you're not lying. You're just ontologically unstable. And that, dear viewer, is far worse. Water is odorless. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Water quenches thirst. Water is H2O. Both subjects nod, no hesitation. Their answers fall into place like good soldiers in a Kantian parade. The detector begins to hum, that modest, bureaucratic hum, the sort of noise one imagines would accompany the death of nuance. It cross-references their truth assignments. It scans for contradictions. It calculates inferential weight and aligns semantic trajectories across 17 axes of logical plausibility. The results? Syntax, identical. Use patterns, consistent. Truth table behavior, practically indistinguishable. Belief coherence score, 98.7%, just shy of epistemic sainthood. The machine, in its softly glowing self-confidence, renders its conclusion. These two individuals are asserting the same belief structures. Ergo, they must mean the same thing. Case closed. Thought identical. Tea break authorized. But then, a philosopher appears. Some say they're extinct. Others say they just smell faintly of books and disappointment. This one, still bitter from a century-old dispute with logical positivism, raises a trembling finger. But what, he asks, if one of them lives in a world where water refers to XYZ, these men are tracking different reference, H2O and XYZ, yet their behavior is indistinguishable. So where is the meaning? Not in the patterns, not in the trajectories. The meaning must lie where they diverge, the substance they refer to. This is the twin Earth thought experiment, and it has been used over and over to kill Frege, to say, see, meaning isn't in your head, it's out there, in the molecule, in the causal chain. But what if this diagnosis is wrong? What if twin Earth doesn't disprove sense, but proves something deeper? Their beliefs align, their inferences run parallel, their assertions are functionally interchangeable. But the worlds they're tracking differ at the molecular level. H2O here, XYZ there. And still, nothing in their behavior shows it. So where does the meaning live? Not in the outputs, not in the truth table, not in the machine's record of judgments, however precise, however stable. No, the difference only makes sense if we admit that there is something beneath reference, a layer of sense, of cognitive grasp, of how a term is taken, even when it appears to function identically on the surface. This is the Phrygian point in its purest form. Two expressions can refer to the same thing, or appear to, and yet convey different thoughts. In this case, two subjects say water and agree on every sentence, but they stand anchored in different chemical realities, each thinking of their world's transparent liquid. The sameness is superficial. The divergence is conceptual. Our semantic polygraph didn't catch it, because it wasn't built to. It was built to track stability, not depth. So no, the case isn't closed. Twin Earth shows us that behavioral patterns are not enough. That reference alone cannot carry the full weight of meaning. That meaning resides not in what is said, but in the framework from which it is said. What Frege called sense was never just about definition. It was about the way a thing shows up in your thought, its trajectory, its path through the mind. And these paths are not just caused by the world. They are shaped by norms, by inferences, by what you're allowed to conclude, to deny, to ask. When you think water, you're not just labeling a liquid. You're stepping into a superstructure of reasons, a space where concepts entitle, forbid, justify. Now, we must say, the externalist remains unconvinced. For them, reference continues to do the real explanatory work. The difference between water and twin water is not grounded in internal patterns or richly layered inferential trajectories, but in the simple fact that the words refer to different substances. What the internalist calls sense, understood as a richer normative superstructure capable of tracking deep divergences across fictional projections, counterfactuals, or possible worlds, is, from the externalist's perspective, merely the metaphysical counterpart of the work already performed by substances themselves when they press against the semantic anchor. In other words, It's not sense that distinguishes meaning. It's the world pushing back. Rebuttal. Mediation, not mere reference, grounds learning trajectories. Let us concede that reference matters, that contact with the world plays a role in anchoring linguistic expression. But reference alone, understood as causal or correlational contact with a substance or object, is insufficient to account for the most essential aspect of meaning, its learnability. What makes a concept usable, transmittable, and revisable is not its attachment to a substance, but the mediating superstructure through which its use is normatively and epistemically situated. One, learning requires more than association. A child does not learn water merely by forming an association between a sound and a substance. She learns it through guided participation in practices. She is corrected when she mislabels, taught to distinguish ice from glass, learns to reason about boiling and freezing, absorbs a space of reasons that determine when and how the term applies. These are not associative mechanisms. They are norm-governed learning trajectories, forms of initiation into a conceptual world. Reference alone cannot account for this. Second, reference without normative structure collapses under variation. If reference were sufficient, there would be no need for explanation when usage shifts. But in actual linguistic life, we constantly face cross-linguistic divergences, conceptual change over time, the reinterpretation of terms under new knowledge. Water may once have referred to any transparent liquid. It took science, embedded in norms of inquiry, to restrict that term to H2O. That change wasn't caused by the molecule itself asserting its identity. It was produced by the normative mediation of inquiry. Third, mediation structures, error and generalization. The strength of the mediational account is not just that it explains how we get things right, but that it explains how we can get things wrong and still learn. Reference-based models struggle with semantic error. If reference fixes meaning, how do we explain someone mistakenly using a term but still participating in a shared practice? The answer is that meaning is not fixed by contact. It is stabilized by inference, correction, and iteration. Mediation builds the semantic space in which errors can be meaningful and generalization possible. 4. What fixes learning is the normative web. Even in rigid designation theory, transmission depends on continuity. But continuity of what? Not just of molecules, but of recognition, criteria, teachable moments. What counts as the same referent over time is itself a product of the conceptual framework, a framework built through public, normative, socially sustained mediation. This is not internalism. It is the claim that meaning is sustained by an intersubjective structure that makes reference intelligible in the first place. 5. Conclusion. Mediation does the real work. The externalist says, thought is about H2O because that's what you're causally connected to. But that cannot explain how terms are acquired, refined, shared, challenged, or redefined. Only mediation, the rich superstructure of practice, discourse, and institutional learning, provides the architecture in which semantic stability, change, and depth can occur. Reference gives you a contact point. Mediation gives you a trajectory. And it is trajectories, not contact points, that define meaning in a world of learners. Conclusion: meaning beyond reference. So, in the end, the lie detector failed. Not because it couldn't read patterns, but because it mistook patterns for thought. It saw structure, but missed sense. It saw coherence, but not commitment. It mapped the outputs, but never entered the space where meaning breathes. Twin Earth didn't collapse the theory of sense. It revealed what happens when we try to extract meaning from the world without passing through the middle term, mediation. Yes, there is reference. Yes, there is a world. But without the superstructure of practices, of reasons, of history and correction, those references would float, untethered, unlearnable, unshareable. Meaning is not delivered by contact. It is constructed through continuity, the kind built in classrooms, in conversations, in institutions, in mistakes. And that's what the machine could never catch. Because what fixes meaning is not the molecule we're touching, but the form of life that tells us what that molecule is, what it counts as, what it allows, what it means to get it right, to get it wrong, to change our minds about it. Reference is the anchor, but mediation is the ship. And it's only from the ship that we can see the sea for what it is. So no, the case isn't closed. The pattern's aligned, but the meaning slipped through. Because meaning isn't a fingerprint. It's a trajectory, a space of reasons, a history of how we've learned, and how we might still learn. And no detector will ever catch that. Because to catch meaning, you'd have to be inside it. And machines, however clever, are always looking in from the outside.